Welcome back, Milliwatts. Today we're going to be looking at the Fulltone OCD. Let's run down the features on this thing. It's got an on-off switch that controls a red LED light. That tells you if it's on or off. Now it runs on a 9-volt battery if you're running around mobile. It also runs on a 9-volt power supply, as well as an 18-volt power supply if you want more headroom out of the pedal. It's got a high-pass, low-pass switch up here. Now the high-pass, low-pass, what that does is if you knock it down to low-pass, you kind of knock some of that, that high-end treble off, and it gets a little bit smoother. So if you've got like a bunch of pedals running on your bass guitar or your electric guitar, and you don't necessarily want all that high frequency, you can do this little cut and it'll make everything a lot smoother. I typically am running very few pedals, so I want the most out of the pedal, so what I'll do is I'll put it on the high pass, and I typically leave it there, because if I want to knock some of the treble off, I'll just use this tone knob. Now this tone knob is very similar to a tone knob on your guitar or your bass. It's very simple if you want more treble or if you want more bass. It's not a very elaborate EQ, but it works. So now we move to the volume knob. The volume knob allows you to adjust how much volume you want going from the bass to the amp or to your interface or wherever you're sending your signal. This is really important if you're, let's say, recording into an interface or you're recording into your amp and you want distortion, but you don't necessarily want your amp full volume to start breaking up. This is really key for setting your gain stage so that you can kind of get some breakup without having to be full volume. So that brings us to the drive knob. The drive knob allows you to dial in how much gain or distortion that you want going into your signal. So this whole thing kind of acts as sort of like a preamp if you're going into an amplifier or if you're going into an interface. It's a very wide frequency, so you can have it very clean if you want it, or you can have it very dirty, all depending on this drive knob here and the volume. You know, if you have the volume really high, it's going to be kind of hard to get some of the drive out. But you can. This thing is so versatile that you can go from super clean to super dirty. So for today's review, we're going to be running the Rickenbacker bass, the Gibson guitar, and the Roland drum machine, all through the Fulltone OCD, going direct into the Focusrite interface, into Ableton 10 with no plugins. The reason I wanted to do direct today was because I wanted to kind of show everybody a nice alternative to using the plugins like the amp simulators, like the fake Marshall and the Vox kind of plugin amps that they have on Pro Tools and on Ableton and Logic and stuff like that. I'm not too much of a fan of the plugin versions, and this is a really nice kind of amp preamp before going into your interface, so you can get some gain and you can kind of dial in an amp tone without, you know, actually having an amp, because not everybody's allowed to play their amp. You know, if you're in an apartment or if your parents are complaining and stuff like that. So this is a really nice option to have compared to just going into like a plugin or something. It also allows you to have your guitar go full volume going into the interface, because that was the biggest issue that I ended up having after recording a bunch, was that I wasn't able to fully turn up my instrument, and I would have to turn the preamp on the Scarlett all the way down to get a usable tone. So this really is the kind of gateway to going into the interface with an instrument. I really love it. You can totally shape your tone with this tone knob and adjust how much gain and distortion. Really killer pedal. All right, let's get started. We're going to start with the bass, then we're going to move to the SG, then we're going to move to the drum machine. Let's go. All right, so now we've got the bass guitar. I've got the volume set, I've got the high pass filter up, and I'm going to run through the drive settings, and then I'm going to run through the tone settings, okay? So we're going to hear it off. It's going to be very quiet because I've got the Scarlett turned down low. I've got it turned down very low because you can see the volume on here is up. So we're basically doing sort of a boost. I've got that set low so that I can have this set high and get some distortion out and have my bass turned full up. So here we go. All right, let's add some distortion. Some drive. A little bit more drive. A little bit more. Full up. Okay, so let's dial that back a little bit. Alright, so now we've got the tone knob. We're going to hear how that goes. It's set in the middle, but we're going to go to the bassiest. Bring it up a little bit. So it's very trebly. So now let's hit the high pass down to the low pass. High pass. So you can see it knocks some of the treble off, as well as kind of knock some of the ringing down. All right, so now we've got the Gibson SG. I've set it up so that it's got the drive in the middle, we've got the tone in the middle, and we've got the high pass filter up. I've set the volume so that we can kind of run through the drive settings and the tone settings and leave the volume set just so we can kind of hear what it sounds like with it and without it. I've got the guitar set with the volume full up, and we're on the bridge pickup. We're also on the bridge pickup on the Rickenbacker bass, so let's hear it without it. Alright, let's turn it on. Just got a bit crunchier, so let's turn down the drive all the way and hear how it sounds without it. Turn it off. On. So it got a bit crunchier, not fully distorted or anything, but it sounds a bit more like an amp. So let's turn it up a little bit. It's maybe about 25%. Halfway. $75. Full up. So it kind of makes it sound like an amplifier, more so than just going direct into the interface. I like this sound a lot more than the plugins that come with Ableton or Pro Tools and stuff like that. The amp simulators don't really get that kind of crunchiness that this does. This has a way more natural kind of immediate feeling compared to the plugins. So really cool. Now let's run through the tone settings, okay? Let's go bassiest. Kind of emulates a bit of like having a cabinet. It kind of makes it a little bit more detached. So let's go to about 25% on that. Middle. That sounds a bit more natural. I guess you could kind of knock a little bit of the highs off to maybe a little bit in between the quarter and 50%. That sounds a little bit more like a cabinet simulation. Let's go to about 75% on the tone knob towards the treble side. Alright, let's go full treble. Very trebly. Very cool. So let's move over to the rolling octopad. So now we've got the octopad. We're going to run it without the effect of the OCD, then we're going to add it in, and I'm going to show you what that sounds like. Right now we've got the volume set the same as the guitar was set. This is kind of the 1-2 kind of boost. I've got the octopad turned up pretty high. You kind of want to have this set to a certain level, and then you don't really want to change it once you've kind of worked out your gain stage with the interface and this box. When you change it, it can very drastically go from too much to too quiet. So we're just going to leave that the same. We've got the high pass filter up. We've got the drive knob in the middle, and we've got the tone knob in the middle. First we're going to hear it dry, and then I'm going to add it in. Alright, so here we go. Alright, pretty stock and standard 808s. Now we're going to add it in. Everything just got a bit more punchier. Everything got a little bit more distorted, and it sounds a bit more real, like it's going through like an amp or something. Very cool compared to the stock. Just got way more aggressive. I totally love that. Okay, so now let's work the drive knob. Once I work the drive knob, then we'll go to the tone knob, just the same as the others. So here we go. We're going to start out with the cleanest. It's on. Alright, about 25%. 50%. 75%. It's getting a lot cooler, alright, so that's full up, and it's totally distorted. It's almost doing a sort of like natural compression type sound. Really cool compared to the original no pedals. Very cool. So that concludes today's video of the Fulltone OCD pedal. We've run a drum machine, an electric guitar, a bass guitar, all going direct into the interface through the Fulltone OCD. This thing can totally spruce up your tone going into the interface instead of having to use plugins. Highly suggested that you guys get one of these. Love you, Milliwatts. See you next week.
Like and subscribe!